You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Okay, good evening. My name is Peter Basserman, and I will now open the regularly scheduled meeting of Brantford's Inland Wetland Commission. It is June 9th, 2022. The time is 7 o'clock. Meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting using the Zoom software conferencing platform instead of the in-person format. It's being held in compliance with Public Act 22-3. All, let's see, what do you got? 4 commissioners present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commissioners present. So everyone is seated and can participate in this evening's discussion. Since there are 5 commissioners present, we have a quorum. The agenda for tonight's discussions are available on the town website. Notice for the meeting is in accordance with Brantford's town regulations. Materials for this evening is available on the town's Dropbox or online. To enhance public exposure to this evening's proceedings, Brantford Community Television is recording and broadcasting tonight's meeting. And we welcome additional commissioners, Suzanne Sullivan. We are thankful for the participation of customers of Comcast because the public can view these recordings at the appropriate cable television channel. Regarding tonight's meeting, there's an enforcement action that is first, and then the public hearing on proposed changes to the town's regulations. This is the first time we're using a virtual format to conduct a public hearing. The use of the screen sharing feature associated with that format should facilitate all parties present with the relevant information discussion. Participants should mute their microphone during tonight's meeting so unwanted feedback will not deteriorate communications. When afforded the opportunity to speak, unmute your microphone. Please clearly provide your name and address before your remarks so that the record is complete and accurate. To indicate your desire to comment, please use the raise your hand feature of the Zoom software. The town's inland wetlands agent, Jamie Fredericks, will monitor such requests. This procedure is not intended to squash participation, rather to provide some order in the communication exchanges. At this time, I'd like to ask Jamie for any supplemental remarks she feels would facilitate tonight's meeting regarding Zoom software and the use for participants this evening. Anything to add, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. I just want to add that there's information on how to raise your hand on the tonight's agenda. And if you have any issues, then we can try to assist you. If you can put a comment in the chat.
Okay, we'll take a roll call first. Melissa Papatonis.
Commissioner Papatonis present.
Suzanne Boda.
Commissioner Boda present.
Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman present.
Commissioner Steinberg. You're muted, Mark.
Commissioner Steinberg present.
Commissioner Basserman present. Okay, we have, also we have Jamie Frederick from staff and Michelle Martin, who will be recording tonight's meeting for minutes. Approval of minutes, we have 2 sets of minutes, May 4th, 2022, and the site walk of June 2nd. First up, the May 4th minutes. Had the opportunity for the commissioners to review those minutes? And if so, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Commissioner Steinberg, I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Begeman, second.
Any discussion of those minutes? All in favor of the approval of those minutes of May 4th, 2022, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
June 2nd, site walk, short but sweet minutes. Again, a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Boda. I make a motion, we approve the June 2nd site walk minutes.
Great. Is there a second?
Commissioner Steinberg, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And were
I
there any-
abstained to the first,
May
I
14th?
abstained for the first one.
Yeah, abstentions for the first one? Okay.
Yeah.
Regarding the agenda, does staff have any changes to the agenda this evening?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. I just might suggest tabling the public hearing till after the jurisdictional ruling request, if there are no clear members of the public present for the public hearing at the time that we get to that item. Just so that the representative from Regional Water Authority wouldn't have to sit through the public hearing.
Okay. Did I miss a commissioner? On the roll call? Yeah, no, I guess I didn't. Okay, thank you.
We're good.
First up on tonight's agenda is CC 220501 and notice of violation for 35 Bayberry Lane, clearing of vegetation and ground disturbance within 100 feet of a wetland.
Jamie.
The maintenance plan and I guess a cease and correct order. Jamie?
Yep, so Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. The commission approved the restoration plan at the last meeting. However, they wanted additional information on maintenance of the proposed seed mix and of invasive species management. So I did receive a report that addresses that I'll pull up momentarily. And the property owner did send a couple of photos of the area that was seeded so that you can kind of get a feel for what that's looking like. Nope, wrong thing. So, real quick, I'll pull up the site plan. Single family residential property, residence, garage, wetland limits, and disturbed wetland area where they were clearing some area that had been damaged previously by a storm and where a previous owner had piled some debris. They did not realize it was a wetland area. When I told them they had to have wetland delineation done, they promptly hired somebody to do so and submitted the restoration plan. The outstanding information was regarding maintenance of the restoration area. So we received this report from CLA engineers, specifically Bob Russo, the soil scientist, basically stating that mowing of vegetation is to occur not more than twice per year and must take place after September 1st. Mowing must be at a height of at least 8 inches. This will allow herbaceous plants to set seed before mowing and will discourage the growth of shrubs. Invasive species such as multiflora rose and Japanese barberry will be grubbed and pulled by hand each spring after leaf out so that they can be positively identified. This task will be performed for the next 2 years. And then there's a picture of some of the growth coming in. Again, this is the disturbed area that's been seeded and a slightly different shot. So I think
when was that taken, Jamie?
I would defer to the property owner on that.
This is Julie Nidzwick. It was taken on a Saturday?
Oh, okay.
Saturday or Sunday.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I think that the outstanding questions for the commission to consider are, is the information provided sufficient to address the maintenance of the area? And then the secondary question would be regarding the follow-up. The letter indicates 2 years. The commission oftentimes requires 5, but sometimes has reduced it to 2 or 3 years. And then I guess the other part of that is, would you be looking for those follow-ups to be documented by the soil scientist, or are you okay with the inland wetland agent doing the follow-up inspections?
Commissioner Bassman, regarding the report, Jamie, is it our practice that we have a written report, even if it's reviewed by the agent? Or has our practice been that agent review is sufficient?
So agent review would be notes in the file and reporting back to the commission at a subsequent meeting. It wouldn't be like a formal report like you would get from a soil scientist with, you know, extra details in there.
I guess, is Commissioner Bassman again, I guess my comment would be, you know, it's, if things move along as they should and the vegetation takes hold as we hope it does, then, you know, an agent review is probably sufficient. If things don't go the way it should and we need more inspection or assessment from a professional, you know, then a report to me is more the rationale. But obviously, not knowing the fork in the road.
Well, you could, if you wanted to extend the time frame, you could do 2 years soil scientist and then the subsequent years by the inland wetland agent, assuming that the first 2 years are successful.
Commissioner Bassman, that sounds reasonable. Anybody else feel similarly?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that makes sense to have the reviews done by Mr. Russo, and then at the following the second year, we can reevaluate who's doing the actual maintenance in the spring, removing the identifying and removing the multiflora rose and the barberry. And because I think in addition to multiflora rose and barberry, like if you're pulling those two things, I think it's very possible for other things to start to show up that I don't know if the property owner can speak to this, but may not necessarily be recognized as an invasive, but there sure are a lot of them, and they are pretty opportunistic.
Yeah, that's the benefit to having a soil scientist do the monitoring reports over having me do them, just because the soil scientist is being hired to do the job and they can spend more time on it. Whereas I've got a million inspections that I'm trying to get done usually, especially in that time of year. So I would say that the soil scientist would do the inspection and provide feedback to the homeowner, and then it's up to the homeowner if they want to do that work themselves or if they would be hiring somebody to do it.
I think that makes sense. There are a lot of different invasives, and it can be really hard to discern what's what, especially in the spring, and then they get pretty well, they're pretty aggressive and they fill in very quickly, and especially with the multiflora, either one of those, they're not fun to pull out.
Okay. So if the commission, do any other commissioners have any thoughts or feedback? So I think that then if the next step is to determine whether the cease and correct order remains in place and is modified or is overturned. It sounds like it's gonna remain in place for the time being. Generally, the commission doesn't release it until the monitoring is done. So I think clarification as to the duration of monitoring, I don't know if you want to say for at least 2 years and reassess at that time, or if you want to say 3 years, 5 years. That would be the kind of an example of a modification that could be made to the order. And if you want, I can pull up the cease and correct order that was issued.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I would say typically we do 3 to 5 and 3 being on the low end. So I would suggest 3 years with a reevaluation at the end if we need the last 2. If things are going nice and smooth and everything is vegetated and not needing to do a bunch of pulling, then we might consider releasing at the end of the 3rd reporting year.
Here's Commissioner Bashman, that works for me.
Yep. Commissioner
Right.
Steinberg agree.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, can we actually get a motion on that?
So Jamie, you're asking for a motion on a modification to the cease and correct.
Yes, to uphold with
Specifically about the-
modification. Let me,
Right, so then I'll make a motion that we amend cease and correct 22.05.01 to a minimum 3-year monitoring plan, at the end of which the commission will evaluate and review and determine whether to continue without monitoring for years 4 and 5. And the maintenance and reporting should be done by soil scientist or other such qualified individual.
Commissioner Bashman, I'll second that. Any further discussion, comments by the commission?
No.
All right, we'll take a vote, I guess at this point. Commissioner Steinberg,
Yay.
Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Papantonis,
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Bassman, aye. Okay. We still do not have a member of the public on the meeting tonight. Is that true?
well, we have the resident for the first item, but
Are you intending to stay for the review of the regulations? You do, okay?
do you mind if, okay, so do we still want to table real,
I
do
would,
you want to,
I would like to order, I think, the Regional Water Authority now and then do the public hearing, if that's acceptable to the rest of the commission. Since we have Mr. Walters here from the Regional Water Authority on the call.
Okay.
Is that okay? Everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need a motion for that to amend the?
I think because we're tabling, it's okay, but if you want to do a motion, it never hurts. If you are adding something, you need to have a motion.
Do you
But-
want to, this is Commissioner Boda, do you want to just put that, the public hearing closer to the end, because we also have the application for review?
That's,
Um,
so
um,
I don't think,
okay.
currently, we don't have anyone present for any of the other items. So I would say that the
Yeah.
only item to move up at this time would be the Regional Water Authority jurisdictional ruling request.
I think the rest of them we can do probably pretty quickly, and the public hearing is going to take a while.
So It is Julie Nedzwicki. My intent was to follow the agenda. If it's not going to be covered at this point, I will drop off so that that'll maybe make your scheduling easier. But I was interested in that item on the agenda.
We are still gonna have the public hearing.
It's just, we're just talking about moving it, some other items ahead of it, just because it is it's gonna take a while. And so for folks who just need to be on for something like yours that can be resolved within 15, 20 minutes, we just get that finished so that anyone who might not want to
Right.
sit through it.
Recommendation would be to only move the jurisdictional ruling request because that's the only item that we have somebody else present for.
Okay. Given the discussion we just had, why don't we deal with the Regional Water Authority item on the agenda at this point? Which is item, where are we? Item 4, jurisdictional ruling request, 100 Hosley Avenue, Lake Salt install maintenance of stormwater treatment system. As the commission will note, we had a site walk not that long ago, June 2nd, to review the what they're looking to do. Why don't I turn that over to Mr. Walters? Anything come up from the site walk that you need to clarify at this point?
No, good evening. Ron Walters with the Regional Water Authority. I don't think there was anything that we didn't cover on the site walk. I did submit an updated letter giving some more detail about the location of the activities, the amount of material we're going to move, and information regarding the access road. So we are just looking to find out whether we could do this activity, or that do we need inland wetlands? Do we need to file an inland wetlands application for this project?
So here,
Mr. Bradford, what are we looking at? Is it the updated letter?
this is the updated letter.
I could summarize the additional information in the letter. We're looking at 4 areas of maintenance that's going to cover about 8,600 square feet of the swale to remove debris, logs, and built up sediment and leaf and organic material. We estimate about 15 cubic yards of material will be removed. In order to do that activity, we need to disturb about 4,200 square feet of vegetation to get access to the swale. And in addition to that, establishing an access road would require about 60 cubic yards of processed stone. Most of the activities will be done with a excavator. We will be doing this during a dry period of time. We'll make sure that there is no sediment entering Lake Saltonstall from this activity. So we will probably at the right at the lake, we would probably be putting in sandbags or some type of berm to prevent this water from getting into the lake, that we're going to be, if there's any in the swale, to disturb any sediments. The purpose of this activity is that it was originally designed to remove sediment and debris from the lake. Over time, for several reasons, the Regional Water Authority, as in this site and other sites throughout the watershed that we have stormwater detention basins, kind of the maintenance, we didn't keep up with it. We now realize that in order to have high quality water, we need to make sure that we're not sediment isn't entering the lake, and also organics from leaf decay and other vegetation. So we did last year actually hired 2 positions to work specifically on our diversions and our stormwater treatment systems to improve water quality, to make sure that these systems are being properly maintained. So that's why we are here today.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So the section that they are referencing for I believe it's
maybe.
It's D,
D.
4.1D.
construction and operation by water companies as defined by section CGS section 16-1 as amended, or by municipal water supply systems as provided for in chapter 102 CGS as amended, of dams, reservoirs, and other facilities necessary to the impounding, storage, and withdrawal of water in connection with public water supplies, except as provided in sections blah, blah, blah as amended. And that has to do, that does not have to do with the project at hand. So what the commission's really, I think, considering is whether this is a facility necessary to the impounding, storage, and withdrawal of water in connection with public water supplies. The commission back in 1997 did take a permit for the installation of the stormwater treatment system. I don't know what the statutes were at the time regarding as of right and exempt activities. So I think the question at hand now is regarding 4.1D.
What's the difference, this is Commissioner Bassett, what's the difference between impounding and storage?
I don't know.
Because I'm trying to see where this project lines up with one of those words.
This is Commissioner Boda. I don't know that, given that it's a statute that it sometimes it seems like whether you call it this or whether you call it that, they mean the same thing. They just want to cover bases. So it doesn't matter if you call it storage or impoundment. Either way, it's an as of right. I think at this point, I would vote for this to be recognized as an as of right activity. I think that further activities beyond this maintenance, of course, would need to come back for additional requests just to confirm that they're still working under section 4.1D. But unless someone can make another case, I'm not really sure why it would not be considered an as of right use.
This is Commissioner Bassett. Yeah, I have no problem with the conclusion. It was, if we were to hang that decision on something, is what in 4.1D, is the direct link.
Well, I think you could theoretically make an argument for the fact that it's water quality treatment preventing the sedimentation of the impounded water, which is the lake that is used for the public water supply. But that's really up to the commission to determine if that's what this is.
This is Commissioner Bagman. I think that
it's all about taking care of water, and that whatever it's called, that big cement thing with the slit in it could be considered a facility. It's not a building, but it's something that helps with the water. So I think I agree with Commissioner Boda, and I think this is an as of right maintenance of their facilities.
This is Commissioner Steinberg. I agree. It looks like a necessary maintenance, so I would agree.
Commissioner Bassman, yeah, and we all said the same thing, maintenance. The only problem is I don't see maintenance in 4.1D, but the conclusion is a reasonable one. So,
Well, it says construction and operation. So you need to have maintenance in order to have continued operation.
okay, does anybody feel differently? Do we need to take a vote on this?
Yes, please.
Yes. Commissioner Boda,
Well, we need a motion first.
Yeah. So I will make a motion that 100 Hosley Ave, Regional Water Authority maintenance of stormwater treatment system is identified as a as of right activity under 4.1D. And that any work beyond the scope that was discussed in this, in the past couple of meetings, continue to come back to the commission to confirm as of right for any additional work.
This is Commissioner Begemon, I second.
any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Papantonis,
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begemon, aye.
Commissioner Steinberg,
Commissioner Steinberg, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. The as of right passes.
Thank you.
Jamie.
We will notify Jamie 3 days prior of any activity, and we will give her an access permit. So if she or anybody on the commission would like to inspect it during the maintenance, that would be fine with us.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right.
Commissioner Boda raised a question about whether to deal with the other actions and leave the public hearing until the end. The benefit of that is that after a long discussion on the regulations, sometimes the things that need to get discussed after a long session don't get the appropriate time. If these should go relatively quickly, that may be a better timing issue
Jamie
if we were to deal with that next.
Frederick and the wetland agent. I guess the only thought I have is there's 2 items that I believe people will be attending for, and they knew they were after the public hearing, so they could still show up. So I think it would be best to move on to the public hearing and then go to those additional items. And if they don't show up, you can table it to the next meeting.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, next up is the public hearing. Regulation amendments to the inland wetland and water course regulations of the town of Brantford, proposed by the agency. In accordance with Connecticut State Statutes 22A, each municipality in the state must establish a body responsible for protecting the public's natural inland wetlands resources. Brantford established such a body with its inland wetlands department and this commission. They are governed by the town's inland wetlands regulations, which are modeled after a set of state regulations issued by the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. This commission aims to apply those regulations in a fair and uniform manner across all applications that come before us. This commission has spent considerable time over the last year plus reviewing the current regulations. Some changes are necessary to comply with changes in state statutes and court case decisions. Other suggested changes reflect language improvements for clarity. Finally, there is proposed language that reflects conditions the agency believes enhances those regulations. Each numerical section of the regulations will be reviewed by inland wetland staff and the commission. At the end of each section, the opportunity for the public input will be addressed. Finally, after all regulation amendments have been reviewed and comments have been heard, I will then close the public hearing. The commission will then commence its deliberations regarding the application, determine if its regulations have been satisfied, and render a decision. It is possible that given the material to be reviewed this evening and the possible additional material that will need to be reviewed subsequently, that we will commence deliberations at a future meeting. The date and time for that meeting will be disclosed this evening. Commissioners have attended both regular and special meetings to review and deliberate changes to the town's regulations. Material was presented by inland wetland staff that was debated and consensus achieved. At this point, I ask any commissioner who feels that he or she must recuse themselves from this discussion that they please identify themselves. That the record reflect all commissioners seated can participate in the discussion and vote as there were no recusals. Do we have any member of the public on the call this evening?
We still have one member of the public from the first item that expressed interest in reviewing the process. And there could be people watching on
Right.
BCTV that are going, you know, maybe they hear something and they dial in. So I'll keep you posted if there's any raised hands.
Thank you. All right, Jamie, why don't you start us off in the discussion of those regulations?
All right, Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I will just identify real quick. I did receive comments from Deep yesterday. So I do have a couple minor modifications, but nothing, I think, overwhelming or terribly significant. And then I did have one suggestion as well that I realized we kind of had left something open-ended. So I will start screen sharing the regulations. First change is just switching out adopted for approved. And then we've got the commissioners. I guess one question here is Commissioner Grinalsh has resigned. Do we want to take his name off or do we want to leave him on there because he was part of the regulation revision process? I mean, he's not a current member, so that's, I don't know. Any?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think it should just be current. I think that's, we can see already addition, you know, folks that have come in and they've been added. And so for the sake of consistency, I would have it be our current members.
Okay. So to that end, I would say we should also remove Abby York. These are non-substantive changes, so I don't see that being an issue. Our page numbers will change once the final language is adopted, obviously, because we don't have track changes. Just thought I'd mention that. So we're getting to our first point of order, 2.1. Agent. The commission requested that staff add agent because not everyone's familiar with the term duly authorized agent to reference people to that term. Next change is compensation. So we were looking to remove preservation because preservation is not really compensation. And this brings us to the first Deep comment. So let me see if I can pull that up. Okay. So I've copied here the link, some of the email that I got from Deep. The full email's available if we want to look at it. And they had two comments and they explained they did a brief review of the regulations, but they don't go in an in-depth review. So the two comments, first one applies right now, is definition of compensation. To be consistent with the statute, you may want to rewrite to state means in the following order of priority: restore, enhance, and create productive wetland or watercourse resources. This change is also consistent with your section 7(9)(a) of the proposed regulations. So I incorporated that into the full proposed language. So it would be compensation means in the following order of priority: restore, enhance, and create productive wetland and or watercourse resources to mitigate for unavoidable adverse impacts which remain after all appropriate and practical avoidance and minimization has been achieved.
This is Commissioner Bassman. I'm not completely understanding why the order is of particular importance, Jamie.
That is per state statute. So I believe it's in I want to say the title and authority, but I could be incorrect.
Well, and I know, I recall from past trainings that the order of priority is the order in which we are to seek out those components. So you can't just jump to creation of a wetland. You have part of state statutes is that the first avenue that should be taken, that shall be taken, is restoration. And if restoration is not possible, then we go to enhance. And then because we know that humans are not superb at creating wetlands, which is why later we have the 2 to 1. But that I do recall that being frequently stated during, I don't know, CACIWIC or the legal updates or cause meeting or whatever it was.
Yeah, it is per the state statute. If you want, I can quickly search the state
No,
statute and
no,
show
no,
you
no,
where, or you can
Commissioner
accept me
Boda
on
triggered
face
my
value.
neuron here, so yeah, I recall the same thing after she articulated it. Yes, got it.
And that is also in our section 7.9, as Darcy pointed out. So it's consistent with the statutes and with our regulations.
Okay,
So I think it's a reasonable.
I would be very amenable to that change.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you to the state for reviewing.
who said deep wasn't responsive?
All right, so going back to our proposed regulations. Next one is another definition. Did I go by it? Redevelopment. This definition was added based to some changes in section 7.6A regarding stormwater management. The commission was looking at making some modifications to align with practices in the field and also a little bit with the MS4 because the town's kind of looking at trying to universally address MS4 across all platforms that have relevance. So this is essentially the MS4 definition slightly modified based on town engineer comments, which the commission thought were appropriate at the meeting where this was reviewed. And I think that brings us to the end of definitions. So I don't know if we want to open it up real quick to see if there's any public comment.
That's what we said we would do. Yep.
Just gonna check the participant window real quick. I don't see any raised hands. So we will continue. We'll also do another final public comment
At the end.
at the end. All right, so moving on, next is 7.1. This change was made based on a change to section 21 of the regulations. We were taking the application process out of section 21. So to keep a process regarding application forms in the regulations, I thought it best to move it to section 7 regarding application requirements. So just adding a general statement that any new application form or modification to existing forms would be voted upon by the agency for adoption. So it won't just be town staff deciding to make new forms. The commission has to say yay or nay. Any further comments or questions from the commission? All right. Next is 7.6A. This is the section that caused the definition of redevelopment to be added to the definition section. So changing the first inch to water quality volume, which is the industry standard that we see all the time, just for clarification, and then adding a definition of water quality volume, which is very digitized in this particular copy, but can normally be read. And then it parses out differences for undeveloped sites and redeveloped sites, acknowledging that there are some challenges with developing redevelopment sites. And then also providing a provision to allow for the waiver of this requirement on smaller projects that are less likely to have any impacts to wetlands. And again, providing that calculation. I just see if it goes on. Yeah, just definition for the calculation spills onto the next page.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Boda. I'm wondering, since it's it seems like we are pulling that as a definition, which is really a calculation. Does it make sense to refer to that in our definitions as well and add that up?
Add what to definitions?
Water quality volume. Like D.
Water quality, this is Commissioner Begman, water quality volume is a formula that's in here already. So
Yeah.
No, I recognize that. I'm wondering if, I'm not trying to complicate anybody's life, but if it is a formula which we recognize and is also coming out of DOT or the stormwater quality manual, maybe it doesn't make sense to do the definition, but I thought I would.
Yeah, I don't know that the definition is necessary. And I think that if we want to add new language like that, we're going to want to continue the public hearing to another meeting so that staff can draft that up and the public can view it. So I think weighing that into the importance of whether or not it needs to be defined when it's
not that important.
Is that the only, is that the Commissioner Basco, is that the only formula that we have in our regs like that?
I believe that
It is, right?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it will be easier to read print when we finalize it. But it says 1 inch RA on the top. So 1 inch times R times A divided by 12. But I thought you were going to say redevelopment should be uppercase because it is a definition. And I think that's a minor enough change that if the commission wants me to do that, that could be part of the.
Commissioner Papantonis, I don't think we need to capitalize that.
No, okay. All right.
You had a comment, this Commissioner Bass, you had a comment regarding the de minimis area, and you had a couple of questions about whether to add it to section 2 or 19.
Yeah, so Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent, a lot of these comments are from previous meetings, and I didn't go back and delete the ones that were addressed.
Gotcha.
So it is in section 19, and I think that comment was asking if it should also be in section 2. I think so we already have it defined in section 19. If the commission wanted to add it to section 2, it's not really substantive because it's already defined. It's just copying it to another place, but I also don't know that we need it in 2 places.
Unless it adds clarity, I would.
Except for the fact that you're reaching the term de minimis before you reach the definition.
I'd leave it alone.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments from commissioners on this section?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this section. I assume at this point that we have consensus on the 40% and the 75.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. Are you getting feedback? I'm sorry. Trying to stop it, but it doesn't seem to be working. Do we need to make that italics because it's Latin? De minimis.
I mean, I think that it could be excused, but technically, should it be? Probably. uh,
Well, it's not a substantive change.
yeah.
So I think it would be fine to put it in italics.
Okay.
If that's standard practice. It's interesting. I don't know, like the style of writing that this falls under. I don't know that we've ever really clarified what style of writing it is. If it's MLA or Chicago or APA, you know what I mean? Like how any of that works. But I mean, it looks like generally that is standard. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think generally it's lowercase 2. It's defined in section 19, which is why it's uppercase. It's not defined in section 2. So we could spend all day on grammatical.
No, we won't. No, we won't.
So I guess I might just caution how much we get hung up on these minor details. Okay, so we do want to change de minimis to italics. Is that a general consensus by the commission?
Okay, go.
I'm okay with it.
All right. Okay, any other comments on this section, or are we moving on to the next one?
If we can move on.
So the next one is 7.7 I3, and we were just deleting an extra space. 7.8, we were correcting a reference because we added a definition. So to avoid future issues, just getting rid of what the actual word is and just referencing section 2.1 as it's alphabetical. You can find it easy enough. 7.8 D1, calculations of pre and post stormwater discharges through the 100-year storm, utilizing NOAA Atlas 14 data as amended or comparable data source as approved by the agency. Currently, the commission requests NOAA Atlas 14 data, so just putting that in there so applicants are aware, and then providing the option in case that no longer becomes the standard. 7.10 is our compensation mitigation section. So there were quite a few changes to this section in an attempt to try and make it a bit clearer and more consistent, I think, application. So one of the changes was clarifying that if compensation is required for section 7.9, which per direct wetland watercourse impact, then a mitigation plan is required. And then identifying that there are other times where the commission may require a compensation plan if an applicant is proposing compensation, and that not necessarily all of these requirements would apply, and the commission would identify which applied on a case-by-case basis. Identifies what shall be in the maintenance plan, minimum success standards for the maintenance for the mitigation project, and then addresses monitoring reports. And this was one of the things we were really trying to clarify to make sure that we're getting monitoring reports consistently for each project and making it the 5 growing seasons, and the first year of monitoring is the first full growing season after planting. And then that the report shall be by a qualified ecologist or wetland specialist, and if it's required compensation, and then it may be allowed to be the wetland agent if it is a smaller project and or the compensation is kind of an added benefit to the proposal and not a requirement of the application. And then it continues on to the next page with the bond requirement. So this would require the applicant during the application phase to submit the bond estimate, and that bond estimate would be good for 2 years from when the permit's issued. And if they are delayed further before starting the project, then they would have to do an updated bond estimate with current market prices. The commission had discussed, again, this comment is old, the commission did discuss the 10% installation maintenance contingency and thought it was a good idea to help, I think, with variations in market prices and with the installation cost if the agency ends up having to pull the bond. So I'm going to jump back real quick to section C, the reports. I was looking at it again today, last minute, I know. And in the first section, it says the first year of monitoring shall be the first year that the compensation areas have been through a full growing season after completion of planting. A growing season shall start no later than March 31st. 2 reports shall be submitted in the first year of monitoring, one at the beginning of the growing season and one at the end of the growing season, to be received no later than November 15th. And then 2 goes into the reports must be submitted by. So there's nothing that says what happens years 2 through 5. So I did real quick draft up some language so that we'd have something the commission could look at and possibly consider. So basically I added this last highlighted sentence here. 1 report shall be submitted each subsequent year of monitoring at the end of the growing season. That's the only change that I made from the proposed language sent to DEEP.
Yes, Commissioner Basserman, yeah, that seems fine. I guess one thing that I do not see in the bond area is, are there any conditions, or do we want to lay out conditions under which the bond would be released or returned?
So that's in the bond section of the regulations. We'll get there. So this is in the application phase. So this is just the approval of the bond amount initially. And I think that it helps to have this be part of the application phase because it kind of puts the applicant, soon to be hopefully permit holder, on notice as to what their bond requirement is going to be sooner rather than later. And it also allows, while it's still fresh in the commission's mind, to, you know, itemize everything that they want to have bonded. I think it makes it more fluid to have it at this point. And the commission used to, looking back in older files, the commission used to set the bond amount as a permit condition. So I think it kind of goes back to a previous practice the commission has had. It just adds a lot more structure to what that practice is and spells out kind of everything. So it would definitely be part of it would kind of be a bit of a discussion with the applicant as to what applies on a case-by-case basis. And it might be that the commission asks for a bond estimate so that they can consider should an erosion control estimate be required, provide one for review.
Well, I for one don't have any problem with the additional sentence that you added.
Do any other commissioners have any feedback on whether to include that additional sentence and or any other language in this section?
Commissioner Begmont, I think it's good to have that sentence of yearly monitoring at the end of the season.
Commissioner Boda, I agree.
And I believe we did have a hand raised. Let me check the participant window. Do you want to take public comments or questions at this moment,
Are we at
Peter?
the end of the section here?
Assuming that commissioners do not have any other questions or comments regarding this section, we are at the end of section 7.
Any commissioner have comments in section 7? Let's entertain the public comment then.
Right. Julie, if you would like to unmute yourself and raise your comment question.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that clarification about the frequency of reports. That was one of my questions, so asked and answered. But I had a question about 710A3 and the definition of short and long-term in that context, because I don't think short-term or long-term are actually defined terms. So I wasn't clear how to read that relative to the quantification of other elements within this section.
So this is Commissioner Boda. So generally short-term is what is happening during the construction of a site. And so what's required for during the construction process, and then long-term is following the construction process, assuming everything is developed as intended, then what are the long-term implications for that piece of land? And so when we're making determinations, permitting determinations, we have to consider both the short-term, what's happening during construction when sediment erosion controls and everything is in place, and then what are the long-term impacts to the regulated area.
Okay, thank you. So just to repeat it back to you, short-term is defined as, or the intent of the definition, I guess, because it's not written, is short-term is during a construction period. Long-term is what? That's a component I'm not clear on.
So the long-term is really about, so now let's say that the construction is done, the site is as it's supposed to be. What kind of impacts do we anticipate will have happened to the regulated area that we need to account for? So if, say, somebody is proposing to fill a pocket, then there's going to be both long and short-term impacts. Say someone is proposing to do a crossing during construction, then that's a short-term impact, but we should see that there's no long-term impact to the wetland.
Okay, so just taking the example, in full disclosure, I am looking to do some work on my house, so this was particularly applicable to me. So if you would have a management plan, you'd bring it forward, you would have a plan specific to 710 A3. A short-term plan is what you would be doing during the construction period. The long-term plan would be after and open-ended.
Yeah, with respect to the regulated area. So the long-term plan, generally it's not so much about a long-term plan, although it can be depending on the features of the property, but it's really about long-term impacts that we're taking into consideration. So the first question is, are there long-term impacts, or is it really a construction issue that we look at just during when work is being done?
Okay, I think maybe I misread the term management plan then, so appreciate it. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it can be kind of open-ended, and it varies on various projects. And sometimes your proposed maintenance plan can kind of in and of itself be part of your long-term invasive species management if you're planting natives that will prevent invasives from really being able to come back in. But generally speaking, the commission just wants to have what is the long-term impact going to be, and or how are you going to manage it, especially when there's stormwater management practices involved that intermingle with the wetlands. So if you have a detention basin that discharges to the wetland, making sure that you continue to maintain that stormwater basin, not only so your stormwater management is working, but also so that you don't have an invasive bank building up in your stormwater management basin that's going to then feed in and spill into the wetland, that kind of thing. So I would say if you're concerned about it, then certainly, you know, preliminarily before you submit an application, you can reach out to inland wetland staff and discuss that and how it might pertain to your specific project.
I know how to find you. It was new language. I had read this pretty thoroughly previously. So appreciate the clarification.
Thanks for your comment. Moving on to
Yeah.
section 8.
All right, section, oops, this is exhibit 22. Section 8.4 is simply, oh, never mind. It started off as simply a correction to a reference in the state statute, which section in the state statutes. And then I realized that there was a public act that changed some of the language regarding notice if an application, it takes place within the watershed of a water company watershed. So this is all changes to either correct references to a state statute or changes per state statute. Does the commission have any questions? Or additional comments to add?
This is Commissioner Bodo. No, thank you for making the catching the citation and correcting it.
Okay.
Or reference.
There's no questions or comments from the commission. Does anyone from the public have any questions or comments? I do not see any raised hands. So next is 9.3. So 9.3, this was a suggestion by staff for consideration, and the commission seemed to think it was a good idea, so the language stuck. Kind of changing the language to align with planning and zoning. I think the most important thing here was to provide information on what should be in the notice. So date, location, description of project, and that where the application materials can be reviewed. And then the other change is notice to all properties located within 100 feet of the land that is subject to the application, rather than just immediate abutting properties. And that's something that planning and zoning requires. And I think it kind of just helps, you know, anyone within 100 feet gets notice of the application. If it's a public hearing, that seems reasonable. And also it prevents people from going to planning and zoning, getting a notice in planning and zoning, and then saying, why didn't I get one for inland wetlands?
This is Commissioner Boda. I have a question, and I don't know perhaps if P&Z has this spelled out or if it really replicates it, but so it says that it shall be mailed to properties located within 100 feet. Does that mean the address is within 100 feet or the landowners of record within 100 feet? So in other words, if I'm in a home that is a rental unit, am I going to get the notice, or is someone?
It says to the owners of record. So it'd be to the owners of record of property within 100 feet. So if you're renting, no, you would not. Unless your landlord shared it with you.
Shared it with you. Sure. Okay. Thank you.
On a quick side note, the commission also has a requirement that, well, it gets published in the paper and also
there's a sign,
the
right?
sign, yeah. the sign. So if you're renting next door, you're probably going to see the sign. Especially since the last regulation revision, the commission required that the sign be at least 3 feet by 4 feet and required 6-inch high lettering, which requires it to actually generally be a lot larger than 3 feet by 4 feet. And that did not come up as a possible change this time around. But any other comments or questions, concerns, feedback on 9.3 from the commissioners? All right.
Nobody from the public?
We've got one more section 9, and then we can open it up to public.
Oh,
So 9.5, we just again had a typo. It was referencing section 8.3 and it should have been referencing section 8.2. Any questions, comments from commissioners? And then Peter, do you want to open it up for public comment?
yeah, I don't see anybody on, but
Yeah, I don't see any hands raised. Okay. No changes to section 10, so we'll skip right over that. Next section is 11.6. Very basic, just inland wetlands added and water courses permit and made it all consistently uppercase. And then 11.18, kind of hung over from the last regulation revision, added or its duly authorized agent, basically clarifying that these expiration dates and effective dates apply to all inland wetland permits. And a lot of these changes, aside from the or its duly authorized agent, are per state statute changes that were made in the last 2 years. So now inland wetland permits are not effective until planning and zoning approvals have been obtained. And then the state statute extended a lot of applications so that they're effective for at least 14 years and can be extended to 19 years. So that's what this section is addressing. Just make sure it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't spill over. Any comments, questions, concerns, feedback from commissioners regarding these changes? I did specifically ask Deep if they had a chance to look at this section just because it is based off of all state statute changes, and they commented that it appeared that it was interpreted correctly, so a little bit of extra confidence there. So that's the end of section 11. Do you want to open it up for public comment, Peter? Oh wait, nope, sorry. Nope, that is, yeah.
seeing, I mean, the only, I
No,
don't see anybody from the public.
One more. 11.11, inland wetlands and watercourses permit again. And then again, this changes per public act, state statute change. Again, addressing the fact that inland wetland permits do not become effective until your zoning approvals have, planning and zoning approvals have been obtained. And this is the other section that Deep had a comment on. So I'm going to jump over to the Deep comment page. So Deep stated general provisions, section 11.11 suggests clarifying the last sentence. No work pursuant to the inland wetlands and watercourses permit is authorized until all other approvals under such chapters is obtained. So here's the section at hand. And again, it's this last highlight that got changed by the Deep comment. So it would say no work pursuant to the inland wetlands and watercourses permit is authorized until all other approvals under such chapters are obtained. And I think it just reads a little bit better than what was there, which was no work pursuant to the wetlands permit, inland wetlands and watercourses permit is authorized until such approvals approval is
obtained, yeah.
So I think it's not clear what approval you're talking about.
This is a little bit off course here. Commissioner Basserman. My discussion with Darcy at the last CAGI meeting was very few of the towns are changing their regulations. What happens when you have these statutory changes embedded in our state regulations when they're not absorbed into the local town regulations?
So state statute trumps local regulations. So if you don't incorporate into your regulations, it still applies. And the commission specifically addressed this regarding fees relative to a recent change. And since the regulations were not changed, the commission did make a determination as to how they were going to handle it until the regulations were changed. So I think basically, if it doesn't contradict what you have, then it applies. And if it contradicts, then taking a practice similar to what the commission did regarding the fees is a good idea. But yes, you have to comply with state statute, whether it's in your regulations or not.
Thank you.
That's why a lot of the changes we're making are per
Yeah.
state to statute
Right.
changes and or clarification of things that the commission had notes on previously. Any comments, questions from the commission?
Nope.
Specifically, does the commission want to adopt the change that Deep proposed as I've interpreted it here in Exhibit 20?
This is Commissioner Begemon. I think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Papantonis, I agree.
Mr. Steinberg, agree.
Commissioner Basserman, agree.
All right, so now if we want to open it up for public comment, please raise your hand if you have any public comment. I do not see any raised hands. Next section is section 13. All right, so this is the bond section, and we kind of did a complete overhaul. So the section now requires for itemization of the bond, bonding of sediment and erosion control measures must be submitted cash, check, certified check, unless otherwise approved by the agency and town council. Puts that stress on the cash the commission generally likes to see, but provides a little bit more leeway should the commission have something presented to them that they think is a fair consideration to apply other bond options. 13.2 is unchanged. 13.3 goes into types of bonds, so a surety bond, cash check, certified check, and then other forms may be acceptable as approved by the agency and town council. Kind of highlighting the forms that have been kind of preferred by the commission and had more support from the finance department, but again, allowing for other possible forms should proper.
This program was brought to you in part.
And, approved by the agency and town council. Surety bond shall be executed in accordance with forms approved by the agency. That's something that staff will work with town council to make sure is prepared prior to the need to implement. Then this section, posted work covered by the bond has not been completed within the terms of the permit. Agency or its duly authorized agent may declare the project to be in default with the permit and require that all work be completed regardless of extent of development at time. Agency or its duly authorized agent may use bond funds to bring the site into compliance with the non-compliant items for which the bond pertains. I believe that was based off of language from Madison. Again, just trying to provide a little bit more context to applicants and permit holders as to what the process is. And then 13.6, this gets into release of the bond, which you were asking about earlier, Peter. And it allows for partial return as well, I believe.
Yeah, last sentence.
Okay, and then section 13.7 is to try and reduce the double dipping type impact on applicants. Because oftentimes when somebody needs an inland wetland permit for a project, they also need a planning and zoning permit. Oftentimes both commissions will say, hey, we want an erosion control bond. So it acknowledges that it's the same erosion control plan, it's the same erosion controls. We don't need 2 times the amount of money as long as both commissions have access to pulling it. Then 1 bond should be sufficient, but that has to be all itemized out and approved by both agencies, and that the bond could not be released. If it's for both agencies, it cannot be released without the authorization of both agencies. And then section 13.8 is just to allow people that already have permits to request to be able to utilize the revised bonds language, which both the agency and town council would review and determine if that would be appropriate to do. Any additional comments from the commission regarding these changes, why they're being proposed?
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, is this codifying in our regulations in with the language practices that we are doing anyways? Or how much of this is a change in practice?
So I think that the biggest change in practice is, okay, so currently the commission requires cash. However, they made a change with the 2017 regulation revisions to allow, if it's over 10,000, to up to 50% of it to be a surety. So this kind of takes the surety away from being this arbitrary 50% and allows the commission to tie it to things that are less immediate of nature, and or if there's other arguments made for like part of the erosion control bond or something like that. So it provides more latitude, I think, for the commission to consider the specifics of an application. And then as far as 13, I think it just provides more clarification as to the types of bonds. 14 or 13.4 is more of a administrative thing to make sure that we have the proper forms for the surety. 13.5 is kind of just, again, kind of a notice of what the process currently would be, and just putting it in the regulations. 13.6, I'm not sure yeah, so the commission has done, I think, partial bond returns, but there's nothing in the regulations that really speak to it currently. So this is just kind of codifying that, and it is consistent with planning and zoning practice.
Okay.
13.7 is to try and avoid past issues, but also make sure both commissions are protecting their own interests. And then 13.8 is in case somebody sees these changes and likes them and wants to try and apply them to their permit. Seems reasonable that if the commission thinks that this is the best way to move forward, that they allow current permit holders to request to utilize this if they so choose. But it wouldn't automatically apply because the regulations from when they receive their permit are the regulations that their permit is governed by.
Thank you. No member of the public?
Do we have any other comments from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think we spent a lot of time working on updating this particular section. So I think the cleaning up, aligning with the other land use commission, I think it is a benefit to the regs.
And going back to the chairman's opening up for public comment, I do not see any raised hands.
Yeah, it seems to me that Julie got her answer because she had a project in mind. And
We do
we're-
now have 2 other members of the public.
oh,
Granted, they're the 2 people that I said would be attending later, so. But they could still have questions, comments, or concerns. Okay. So no other comments on this section. Moving on to section 19. Okay, so 19.1, we added check because it is the current practice that the agency does accept personal checks. 19.2, removed delay payment schedule because I've never seen that. I don't know how it would work. I don't know that we need to have it. And that seemed to be, the commission agreed with that at previous review meeting. The application fee is not refundable. That's where it used to end. We've added a little bit of language to help address different circumstances that might pop up where maybe it would be appropriate to return the fee. And it clarifying that if they submit an application and the commission determines that no application is required, then obviously the fee would be returned to the applicant.
mhm.
Any questions, comments so far from commissioners? All right. So next is 19.4, which is the definitions in the fees section specifically. A lot of these changes were to kind of better align with the model regulations. And then we added the definition de minimis, which I think to be consistent with previous should be italicized. And that's because we have added back in a de minimis level project fee. So just clarifying that it's not self-determined and that it's determined by the agency or the duly authorized agent. Got rid of multifamily residential development because we don't really reference this anywhere. It's not helpful, so got rid of it. Residential uses, again, changing it to track with the model regs, and then added a definition for total area of disturbance because we oftentimes get questions as to what total area of disturbance means, as the fee schedule relies on total area of disturbance for calculation. So just clarifying, it means the total area to be impacted by the proposed project, both permanent and temporary, which was part of the discussion at a previous meeting where the commission was drafting the language to send to deep. This includes area outside of the upland review area, within the 100-foot upland review area, and within wetlands and water courses. Area shall include all areas of proposed ground disturbance, drainage alterations, utility structures, and vegetation removal. The commission also had looked at total area of disturbance within the upland review area relative to total area of disturbance and fees, and had landed on using total area of disturbance. And I think that the challenges of identifying that 100-foot upland review area when the wetlands either just off the property or some other complicated situation where that information may not necessarily be available. The commission decided to stick with this total area of disturbance and just trying to codify what that is so that, again, applicants are on notice, they know what it is, and it's clear that it's being applied uniformly and fair across the board. Any comments, feedback from commissioners? Great. 19.5, we removed and violations from the deep fee and added the Connecticut state statute reference. The state statute does not apply to violations, which is why it was removed. Section B1, we've put in that de minimis minimal impact activity fee, again specifying as determined by agency or duly authorized agent, which is $25. This is oftentimes things like sheds located like within a lawn area with a vegetated upland review area, retained in between the proposed project and the activity or the wetland. All right, and then we've got the fee schedule, total area of disturbance fee. So this is where that total area of disturbance definition comes into play. And then, so we kind of have this table now for projects over 1,000 square feet, round to the nearest 500 square feet for calculating fee. So up to 500 and 501 to 1,000 are a set fee. And then once you get over that 1,000, that's where you start rounding. And you have a base fee plus an additional fee per 500 square feet over. And then it's split into residential uses and commercial and other uses. It used to be residential and commercial, multifamily, and other uses. And this is where one of the state statute changes came into play. They said that you can't assess multifamily differently than you do other residential applications. So to have a higher fee amount for multifamily was not consistent with state statute. So now residential uses is all one category and all one group. And the commission, when reviewing fees, was looking to try and keep fees consistent with what they currently are as far as value, but restructuring it so that it maybe made a little bit, maybe it was a little bit more simple and more uniform throughout the fee schedule. So the commission did end up bringing the fee down on the higher end of the scale for projects, kind of acknowledging that there may have been some higher application fees on those larger projects than was necessary for the review of the project. Any comments, feedback, things that commissioners want to put on the record regarding the fee change here?
This is Commissioner Vaspin. Obviously, we spent a lot of time looking at what was reasonable for Brantford, also comparing other jurisdictions. And I think the simplicity of the chart that I'm looking at now and the consistency of it is a good improvement.
Yeah, and just to comment that the commission did create a subcommittee to review fees prior to bringing that report back to the full commission for consideration and review prior to submitting this language to DEEP. So again, this section here being removed is incorporated into the table above. Next is 19.5B3. Deleting the remediation and or enhancement activities proposed within wetlands, which are not required for section 7.9 or as a result of a violation. I don't think this fee ever got applied since it was, I think it was implemented into the regs back in 2016, 2017. The commission, generally speaking, for a environmentally beneficial project waives the application fee, and there is a section that allows for waivers. And it was getting kind of confusing for applicants as to whether the remediation and enhancement fee applied or the Schedule A fee. And it just seemed like it would be more simplistic to get rid of it so that that was no longer a confusion. I will jump backwards real quick and say that we did do a quick change with follow-up to hyphenate it. Any comments, questions, feedback from commission on the remediation and or enhancement or any of those other fee changes so far? All right, we're almost done with section 19. After that, we will open it up for public comment. Okay, so section 19.5 C1. I do want the commission to kind of take a bit of a closer look at this one because I feel like this was one we looked at kind of late at night. So subdivision / re-subdivision referral per Connecticut State General Statute, section 8-26E, which is the planning section of the state statutes, without regulated activity or cause to be conducted regulated activity, and changing it from $50 to $0. So I think the intent when staff presented this change is that this would be kind of more of a jurisdictional ruling request because there is no regulated activity. However, if there are wetlands on a parcel that is to be subdivided, the general statutes require a referral from the Inland Wetland Agency to the Planning Commission prior to them making a decision on a subdivision application. So I just want to make sure the commission feels like they have a good grasp on what this would look like, and whether it would change the application of how this section has been used in the past. Would subdivisions, I think this kind of forces subdivisions to get moved into that residential category of fees up here. If there's any regulated activity, it would fall under residential uses. If there's no regulated activity or cause to be conducted regulated activity, it would fall into this category. So if essentially there's two houses on a parcel and the property owner wants to split it into two lots and they're not changing anything, then that would certainly fall into this category. If somebody's looking to do a subdivision with 10 lots, no shared roads, there's already existing frontage, and one or two of those lots is in the upland review area, then I think the commission would have to decide, does that subdivision fall into this category and then require 2 applications for the lots that are in the upland review area? Or would that fall into the other category of subdivision with regulated activity? And I think I just kind of want to caution the commission to this possible issue, particularly if dropping the fee down to $0.
I'm not sure I completely, this is Commissioner Bassman, I'm not sure I completely understand the nuance here, but like it sounds to me like you're going to spend some time reviewing the application to determine whether it meets the criteria that we looked at in the chart above, or whether it falls into this category. If it falls into this category, there's $0 for that review. And I'm not sure that makes sense.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I almost feel like there should be a third category that doesn't exist. And I'm not trying to say that the commission should try and create that now. So I guess my thought and feedback to the commission would be, if this makes sense and it's something that you want to do, then I think that the change should be adopted. If it's something that doesn't really make sense to the commission, then perhaps we should hold off on making the change to this section and wait and reassess subdivision fees at another time and keep it as it currently is, so that the current practices that are already established can be maintained until we have a better view of the overall process of how the commission wants to handle this. I just feel like it's gonna, without regulated activity or cause to be conducted regulated activity, it might make it a little bit more confusing as to who falls into this category. or I might be overthinking it. So if the commission has a clear thought on how this works, then by all means, I think we should stick with it. If it's a big question mark for everyone, then I think, again, maybe it might be a good idea to hold off.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. 826E has to do with whether there's a public hearing required for the subdivision, right?
8-26E is the subdivision.
Yeah, I mean, it says, shall hold a public hearing on an application or request for special permit or special exception as provided in section 8-2, right? So,
8-26E is for the planning commission. So that's the review that planning will do. So in our town, planning and zoning is a joint commission. So it's the subdivision review by planning and zoning. So subdivision referral per state statute, section 8-26E. Let me, I'm pretty sure I have that as a.
yeah, I mean, I pulled it up while you were talking about it.
I might not actually have that particular.
If I
Let's
can-
just be careful about introducing things that are not part of the exhibits into the public hearing. And we shouldn't be looking at things outside of the public hearing exhibits during the public hearing. So
it's just a statute that's referenced.
yeah, I can add it to the public hearing exhibits if it's not in there, but just give me a minute to. You know what? I think it's supposed to be 8-26. All right, I'm gonna stop screen sharing real quick while I figure this out.
This is Commissioner Begman. Well, Jamie's looking at that. So if we don't accept this one line, we're not going to accept any of those changes the way we talked about the fees. We're not.
Excuse me, I may be wrong there, but I think the suggestion was if we can't come closure this tonight, maybe the best thing to do is leave what's in there and deal with this in the next revision or whatever, after we maybe better understand the nuances of what the change would be.
But just very narrowly,
That one.
we're talking, right now, we're talking about 19.5 and then specifically C1 C1. That's how I was considering this one piece. It's just very narrow,
Yeah.
that one. And I think to the chairman's point, the point of these fees is to try to recapture some of the cost of the town staff time. It certainly doesn't, all of these fees don't capture whether it's Jamie's time or the assistant's time, but at least they can, some of them can offset it. And I do think that there would need to be some time spent on it either way. And I don't think that $50 is an unreasonable cost for a review. And then the renewals, all of the rest of it is zero. So I think, I mean, perhaps we would consider it in the future. It's not urgent. And I don't know. I don't think that we need to do anything about it right now. I would leave it.
It's Commissioner Papantonis. I think it's the wrong, I think Jimmy's right that it's the wrong statute that's cited.
It's
so-
actually not the wrong statute. I get tripped up on this all the time. It's 8-26 E in parentheses, not E. And it does say E in parentheses. So I'll make this exhibit 23 and I'll share it with you real quick just so that you can see it. Assuming I can figure this out.
And I'm also, this is Commissioner Boda, I'm also assuming that that $50 has nothing to do with recouping the DEP fee.
No, so generally speaking, a current practice is that it's that $50 plus the $60 deep fee, so it's $110 total. So this is the statute 8-26, and then it's subsection E. And it says if an application involves land regulated as an inland wetland and watercourse under the provision of chapter 440, the applicant shall submit an application to the agency responsible for administration of the inland wetland regulations no later than the day before an application is filed for the subdivision or re-subdivision. The commission shall, within the period of time established in section 8-7D, accept the filing, blah, blah, blah. Commission shall not render a decision, the commission being the planning commission, shall not render a decision until the inland wetland agency has submitted a report with its final decision to the commission. So even if there's no regulated activity, the Inland Wetland Commission still has to submit a report to planning and zoning. So that's what this is ultimately trying to capture. But again, I'm not sure if the changes specifically to 19.5 C1 have been fully ironed out in the relative to the full context of reviewing subdivision applications.
Yeah, this Commissioner Branson, we certainly haven't within the, full commission discussed this change in any substantive way. So my recommendation is leave it, move on, and we'll deal with it in our next review.
So by leave it, you mean leave the existing language and not the proposed language
Correct,
specifically for that 19.5 C1.
correct.
Do any commissioners feel differently?
I agree.
Mr. Steinberg, no, I'm fine with it.
Commissioner Papantonis, I agree.
Commissioner Begelman is fine with me.
It says my screen sharing is paused. Can people see my screen?
We got your CGS up there.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
stop
geez.
and restart because I'm not sure what's going on.
There you go.
Okay.
Is that the last one in 19?
All right. Nope, we've got a couple more, but I think that the rest of them are pretty straightforward. So added a renewal of a permit request, $0. The commission currently doesn't charge for it, but just putting it in there so that if somebody's looking in the fees for it, they know that's what the practice is. Just adding requests to the end of jurisdictional ruling. 19.5 D. So this change was per state statute. Basically, they are requiring that any unused portion of funds for peer reviews or extra assessments will be returned no later than 45 days after the completion of the technical review. And then for clarification, just added a statement that the receipt of the final bill for the technical review shall be deemed the completion of the technical review. Just so that we have a consistent practice for that. And then 19 points. Okay. And then we were proposing the removal of the cease and correct order fee of 2 times because, again, the commission has not used this fee, and this goes against trainings provided by DEEP. They generally feel that this is a very bad practice, and that if something is a cease and correct order, it's a cease and correct order and shall be completed through that process. If there's additional activity they want to do, that would be a new application. However, that wouldn't be part of the cease and correct order, and doesn't make sense to necessarily penalize them for additional activity they might want to do if they're going to be going through the correct process to do it. And I think there was a general consensus from the commission. Yeah, at the February 17th meeting. Okay. And then 19.7, modify waiver language to match DEEP 2006 model regs. So essentially just adding a third option for a reason to grant a fee reduction the applicant has shown good cause. So that kind of gives the commission a little bit of latitude. If somebody's made a good argument for why they should have a fee reduction that doesn't necessarily fit A or B, and then just a formatting issue with this last sentence to make sure it's on its own because it applies to the entirety of the section. So that brings us to the end of section 19. Does any commissioner have any questions, comments, things they want to put on the record regarding considerations?
No.
None here.
All right.
Appropriate time for public comment.
Any public comment, please raise your hand. Oh, we have a raised hand. Vincent, if you want to go ahead and unmute and state your comment, feel free.
Yeah, if you could explain a little bit further the bonding requirements as it relates to enhancement areas. And in particular, I know there's in the past, and I assume the present, in the future, there'll be a evaluation of improvements in enhancement area. You mentioned earlier that the commission has some latitude on releasing bonding on the erosion control section. Is that also going to apply to the enhancement areas? Because I know you have a 5-year period for reports. And how does the possibility of release of bonding pertain to enhancement area?
So Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent, I don't think it only pertains to erosion controls. That's generally what early release pertains to. I think an argument could be made if you've successfully, submitted X number of reports to possibly have that amount reduced because those reports have been received, assuming that they, reflect the positive productivity of that restoration area. I think I am not aware of the commission having a past practice of releasing the plant bond amount prior to the end of the 5 years. That's not to say that it could never, I don't, that would have to be something that would have to be considered by the agency. So it just says, upon written request from the permittee and or a determination by the agency or its duly authorized agent that a substantial portion of the work guaranteed by the bond has been completed, the agency or its duly authorized agent, as authorized by the agency, may approve partial release of the bond. So it's not exclusive to erosion controls.
Okay, so it may cover the enhancement area as well, is what you're...
It theoretically could.
Okay.
Do any commissioners have any additional comments on that?
No.
All right. Vincent, does that address your comments and questions? If so, I'm going to lower your hand.
Yeah, I don't know how to lower my hand, but yeah, that does address, yes, okay.
Okay.
It does address it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any
Alright.
other, any other public member want to make comment at this point? Okay,
We've got one more section, and after that, we'll open it up for public comment, and that will be the, that might be the end of it, depending on. All right, so getting back down, section 21.1, essentially just removing application forms from this section. This section is based by and large off of the model regs. Model regs do not include application forms. And I think that the town clerk's office would very much appreciate it if we didn't clutter their office with all of our different application forms and revisions there too. So this is why we made the change to section 7.1 to have the process for the commission to vote on any new or modifications to application forms. Any comments from the commission?
This Commissioner Boda sounds good.
any other commissioner comment?
No, all good.
Any public comment? Okay,
Raised hands.
no raised hands. We, Jamie, does that complete the deliberate discussions for
So I think,
regarding the regulations?
yeah, just check to see if any commissioners have any comments before closing the public hearing. And if so, then just allow the public to possibly have, you know, any comment in response to that. And if nobody has any additional comments, then you can
Close it.
close the public hearing if you so choose.
Commissioner Begeman, I would just like to commend Jamie on keeping track of all of these changes. And I think you've done a great job, Jamie.
And Commissioner
Ditto.
Bassel, I'll add to that, and has done so for month after month. You know, this is not a one shot. This has been going on for some time. So I applaud the effort as well. Any other comments from commissioners? Public want to make any comment at this point about what they heard regarding the regulation changes being proposed by the staff and commission? Hearing none, I now close the public hearing. No additional material can be presented at this point. We can now have some discussion about where we go from here.
So I think the next step is, A, does the commission want to deliberate this evening and make a decision on whether or not to move forward with the adoption of the regulations? And if so, then I can also go into recommendations regarding effective dates and whatnot.
This Commissioner Bassman, I guess, Jamie, at this point, you know, we've debated it within our commission meetings and our special meetings. We've had the appropriate public hearing where we went through the rationale for the changes in pretty good detail. We've entertained comments from the public so that we make sure that there's an opportunity for the public to comment. At this point in time, if the commission feels that we've exhausted the effort, is it not appropriate to recommend approval and go forward?
If the commission feels they're ready, then I see no reason why you should have to wait. I would just recommend and remind the commission that there were a couple of changes that you wanted to make. And I think the easiest way to mention those would be to reference perhaps, let's see, it would be exhibits 20 and 22 regarding changes to section 2.1, 1111, and 710. And just also that the commission decided to not implement the change to 19.5C1 at this time, based on previous discussion. And then the fact that you want de minimis italicized, I suppose. Oh, and we're removing Renalsh and York from commissioner and staff. And page numbers will be updated based on removal of track changes.
Can you, this is Commissioner Boda, can you restate, you said exhibits 20, 22.
Yeah, so
And-
exhibit 20 address changes to section 2.1 and 1111.
I guess I'm just a clarification. I'm not sure how it is that you're thinking that those exhibits are incorporated into a motion. Are you saying like following changes were made because exhibit 20 provided guidance on?
Let me see.
Because I think, so if the goal is to
So
within a motion to itemize all of the changes that we've discussed, then I think, yeah, I mean, we can list them out now, or, I mean, so to the chairman's question, that would be the reason why we would need to wait a minute to get a report back so that we can make a accurate and complete motion that itemizes all of those changes.
So I think if the commission wants to have a revised, I guess I would be cautious at this point of creating a new document, but staff could prepare like a resolution type document, not a new full draft, but a resolution document that includes the specific changes to the regulations. Or I think due to the relatively minor nature of the changes and the fact that we have those changes written out in exhibits 20 and 22, if you reference those, if you say that you're gonna, if you're satisfied with the regulations as proposed, sent to deep with the changes in exhibit 20 and exhibit 22, and then the omission of the change to 19.5C1, in the italics. I mean, we could list it out right now, or if you would like, I could do a more formal document for the commission to review.
Before we
Can I ask
weigh in on, go ahead.
question?
Yeah,
If,
go ahead.
let's say, for example, we said, okay, as we do with many of our public hearings, we have our deliberation and then you go and you draft a resolution. Based on the timetable, would we be required to have a special meeting in order to do that? Or could that be simply the first order of business at a next meeting where, using the resolution, we make a final vote, motion and vote?
So you have 35 days from closing the public hearing to making a decision. So you could do it at the regular meeting. That would further delay when the regulations would become effective. And as we kind of identified earlier, some of these changes are per state statute. So it would be nice to get those incorporated. However, again, they would supersede the regulations. So there's really no real issue with holding off. So yeah, you could either have a special meeting where you review that and you're done with it, or put it on the agenda for the July meeting.
So
It would be about another month from that date, though, before the regulations would be effective.
this is Commissioner Arboda, and I'm only speaking for myself. I think, you know, having worked on it for so long, there's a desire to like check the box and get it done, but also knowing how much time and deliberation has happened and the cautiousness with which we proceed in order to ensure our work meets the highest legal standards that we can. I would be inclined to say, let's have you draft the resolution so that we're very clear about what is included within that motion. There's not a need to rush it. There's a sense of urgency to just get it done, but like, I think I would just as soon not make a motion that misses a piece, or we need to amend the motion 3 times in order to get it right, and then it's a messy motion, and like it seems unnecessary to do that.
Commissioner Bassman, we certainly don't have a gun to our head in terms of facing a deadline like we do sometimes with a particular application. So I think Commissioner Boda's comment about that highest level of standard is probably something that's worthwhile seriously considering. I guess question I have is, what would the resolution that we would review in July do legally, as opposed to a voice motion that we could make this evening? And I'm not looking to rush through this. I'm just trying to understand with this now, basically, we have used the resolution as kind of a common practice with applications. Are we just merely extending that process to this regulation revision?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think it just, for me personally, like I can sit and listen to like now Jamie go back and I itemize the adjustments that we've made verbally tonight and list them out on paper, and then take those and use those to make a motion. From my perspective, like the difference between doing it now and having Jamie draft out that resolution, we're still going to make a verbal motion, but what it does is it allows Jamie to go back, look at the documentation, look at the record if she needs to, and essentially itemize those carefully so we don't miss anything. And then when we come back at the next meeting, we can look at that and then use that in order to make a motion, which includes all of the changes that we've discussed tonight.
Rest of the commission, what were your comments? You want to go down the path of reviewing it at the next meeting with a written resolution?
I don't see it. This is Commissioner Steinberg. I don't see an issue with that. We have put a lot of time and effort in. So one more, you know, it's not going to make a difference. The state regulations are in charge anyway, even if we don't put these into effect. So I don't see where it's an issue to delay it for next meeting.
I'm always in favor of doing it right, because it's easier to do it right than to fix it if there's a mistake, if we miss something. So I agree with Commissioner Boda.
It's fine with me to wait.
Okay.
So be it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to jump, believe it or not, to a work call. It started at 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock Pacific time. Is that going to cause any problems with the I think we have enough people here tonight.
I think we do.
Okay,
So
just want to be
good
sure
luck with
before
your West Coast buddies.
yeah, thanks. Not my favorite. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll see you this hour.
Yep. Yeah, no. What are you gonna do? Gotta make a living.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Jamie.
All right.
Sounds like a resolution would be available at the next meeting for us to
Yeah, I can
consider.
drop something up and it will condense everything into a easy visible document. I can update the website with that information and send it out to commissioners, so that way everyone who possibly wants to look at it can see it.
Great.
And we want to stick to the regular meeting in July, correct?
Oh, yes.
So
Okay.
deliberations will be continued to the July 14th meeting, which will also be held remotely via Zoom.
Okay, we have next up.
We did 4 jurisdictional rolling requests.
I'm sorry.
I said we already did 4
Yeah,
jurisdictional.
So we're
rolling
on
requests.
5 enforcements. Cease and correct 220601. Oh no, we did that one. Excuse me.
No,
No, we didn't. 22601, second NOV 20 Huntington Drive, removal of trees and placement of debris. You sure we didn't deal with that?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. We have not this evening. We had another season
Oh,
correct.
35
earlier.
Bayberry. Okay, yep.
So I want to say back in 2019, there was some activity at the subject site. A notice of violation was issued. It never really fully got resolved because the area became kind of stabilized and there were some issues with timing and everything. So additional activity has occurred with some more clearing, and some of that debris was placed in the rear of the site, adjacent to possibly within wetland area. The property owner was responsive to me reaching out to him, explained what happened. I told him that he needed to submit a planting plan to restore the disturbed areas and put in erosion controls. Erosion controls have been installed at this point, and there has been revegetation of the disturbed area with some herbaceous vegetation. I have not reviewed it up close, so I'm not sure what kind of herbaceous vegetation. And so the last meeting, the commission discussed deadlines for getting that planting plan. We have not received the planting plan, so I did issue a cease and correct order. In that cease and correct order, I can pull up for the commission to review, and the property owner is present this evening. And I believe I gave a deadline of submission of the planting plan for the July meeting. Sorry, I have to find my files.
This Commissioner Bassman, the deadline was in the cease and correct order.
Yeah, so I required the installation of erosion controls. I know the erosion controls have been installed along the front of the site. And the homeowner indicated they've been installed in the back as well, but I've not been able to inspect that. And I do not have photo confirmation. Of course, my Adobe is not happy right now. So. I did receive a copy of a soils report from 2018. And I understand that the property owner has reached back out to that firm to inquire that they do the follow-up inspection regarding the additional activity. So removal of vegetation within 100 feet of a wetland / water course, placement of debris within 100 feet of a wetland / water course, and possibly within a wetland / water course for the activities that I cited. So the On May 27th, I corresponded with the property owner and I kind of adjusted the requirements that the commission had outlined and stated that if he could get a retainer to have the soils report submitted by July 2nd for the July 9th meeting, that I wouldn't issue the cease and correct order. I did not receive that retainer at that time, so I did go ahead and issue the cease and correct order. The homeowner had expressed that it wouldn't be an issue. So what I have ordered is cease any further site work, contact this office to confirm receipt, did receive confirmation, to observe the hillside. So when I went out to inspect to see if the erosion controls had been installed the last time, they were not installed yet, but there was herbaceous vegetation, which made me less concerned about any erosion potential from that slope because there was vegetation holding it in place. So I attached a map identifying area 1 and area 2 because I could not see area 2 from the street. So I was looking for confirmation regarding that area, requested either a site visit to check that area or a photo submission. And then 3, have a soil scientist come out to inspect the site regarding additional clearing and placement of debris relative to inland wetlands and watercourses, or report addressing the additional activity that has occurred and shall be submitted by July 2nd for review at the July 14th inland wetlands and watercourses meeting. The plan shall address restoration of any direct wetland / watercourse impacts, vegetation / stabilization of the disturbed slopes on site and disturbed areas located within 100 feet of a wetland / watercourse, and a maintenance plan to ensure the success of the above requirements. And then I cited that there would be a just cause hearing at tonight's meeting, which we're doing right now. So this is what the area looked like when I inspected it and met with the property owner back in April 18th. You can see the hillside is pretty bare. And then there's a pond here, another pond here, and then the back of the site, there's a water course. So this is kind of down by that water course area. You can see it a little bit over here. And here is a GIS map with the house. Huntington Drive is up here. Area 1 with that disturbed slope is here. Here are the 2 ponds. And then back here is the water course. And somewhere in this area is where this pile of debris is. So I'll also show a picture. Looks like I didn't get the picture uploaded into the Dropbox. So let me just quickly add that.
And Jamie, this is a picture taken from the street?
Yes. Well, actually, so the property owner submitted one photo and it's not taken from the street. It looks like it's taken from where the tree fell. Looking up towards the street. Can everyone see that photo?
I can, yes.
Okay. So the silt fence is located obviously at the edge of the lawn. This is the neighboring property and this is the subject property. As you can kind of tell, it's kind of revegetated, so the erosion potential is a lot less concerning at this time. However, there was obviously clearing and disturbance that still needs to be addressed. So I don't know if the commission wants to hear from the property owner or review additional materials from the file. The question before you is whether to uphold and modify, or overturn the cease and correct order. One thing that I think would be good to touch base with the homeowner on is, I know they were trying to get in touch with that soil scientist regarding the planting plan. I have been in correspondence with that soil scientist company previously. During some of our correspondence going back and forth, they were CC'd, and they indicated a couple weeks ago that in order to have it ready for the July meeting, they would need to be retained basically at that time. So depending on availability, it might make sense for the commission to be accommodating and allow for the report to be submitted by the August meeting, with the understanding that it needs to be submitted by that August meeting, so that way it can be implemented at the end of this growing season. Just because it might be short notice at this point. A lot of the soil scientists are pretty busy right now to get somebody out there and able to do a plan for July 14th. And also July and August are not the best times to be planting anyways, so.
This is Commissioner Bassman. I believe the letter that you showed us on the screen share, there was a and B to the first section, one of which was a site walk. Did the homeowner not agree to a site walk at this point?
So he did agree to a site walk back in April, and he submitted a photo. The photo didn't really show what I was hoping it would show, but I got that photo this week, and I didn't
feel it's
push.
important for you to be. Do you feel it's important to you to be on property?
I think things are fairly stable at this time, but I have not seen the rear area. But we could certainly ask the property owner if he'd be open to a site inspection to confirm that he is present this evening.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Bassford. That would be my first question for the homeowner.
Mr. Mirage, can you unmute yourself and address the commission's question?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I was trying to figure this thing out. So yeah, sorry. So I'm open to a site visit. Absolutely. As I explained, to Jamie previously, I have medical conditions. So a lot of times sometimes I get sick, sometimes I don't. So that's kind of what's delayed the process. But in any event, yeah, we have the erosion controls up there, as you've seen the vegetation. As she said, it's like that in the front, and it also extends like that all the way to the back. That whole. But yeah, like I said, at any point, we can definitely get out there and take a look at it. I did reach out again to the soil scientists by email and by phone, and I haven't gotten a call back just yet. I'm going to reach out again tomorrow. I'm just trying to retain them since they've already been on site. But if not, I'll. At that point, if I don't hear back by tomorrow, because I've been trying for about a week now, I will, I'll reach out to another company or, whatever it is. At least I have the report in hand. But yeah, so, and then the pile of debris that was piled up back there, that was mainly the clearing that went on there was mainly to remove, and as Jamie went out to the site, you can still see there's trees out there that have already fallen and almost fallen on my house. There was a few trees there that, like that big one I still haven't been able to get off the neighbor's lawn because it's so big, is one of the ones that fell out. A lot of those trees were hollow. And so in those storms that passed during the last few years or whatnot, they've gone falling. And so I hired a company to come out and basically clean it up because it was, one, a hazard, and two, I was getting complaints from all my neighbors saying how bad the property looked. And so I contracted them. Unfortunately, they placed it in the rear of the property. As Jamie said, it's kind of adjacent to that waterway. You know, I'm gonna see, I guess when the soil science or whenever they do the planting plan, they'll let me know kind of where I have to, what I have to remove and whatnot, and I'll take care of that. But it's towards the rear of that water course. It's like, it's basically at the end of it. So in any event, yeah, whatever they suggest, then I'll have to take care of that. And yeah, I mean, that's basically where I'm at now. I'm going to be, you know, if they don't respond to me by tomorrow, then I'm going to just reach out to some other companies and see who can get out there to give us a, you know, get us the planting plan sooner than later.
Mr. Bassman, Jamie, have you given Mr. Mirage a list of soil scientists?
I don't believe I have given him a list of soil scientists, at least not recently, but I can send that over in case he continues to have a hard time getting hold of the current.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll send that over
And
tomorrow.
I
just in
guess
case.
you'll schedule a date where you can visit the property, Jake.
Yeah, so I can send the soil scientist list via email tomorrow. And reach out and schedule a site visit. Hopefully maybe sometime next week.
I guess at this point in time, certainly see no reason to rescind the cease and correct order.
Does the commission feel that any modifications to the order would be appropriate?
I guess the timing you said could be an issue.
Yeah, I
Is
think
that a condition that we need to
realistically,
address?
the likelihood of getting a soil scientist retained and to do a plan by essentially July 2nd is the deadline on that letter. It is very short notice. He might be able to find somebody, but it would be it'd be probably an outlier. So I don't think it'd be unreasonable on the commission's part to extend it to August, stressing that you're extending it to August and it cannot be extended again. Given the fact that he's not going to be planting between the July and the August meeting. And it gives him more time to get a well thought out plan rather than a quick something slapped on a paper and submitted for the commission to look at.
Seems reasonable.
And then I guess the other question is if the commission wants to add anything regarding the erosion controls, specifically, erosion controls to be confirmed to be installed appropriately and or appropriate stabilization of site to be confirmed by inland wetland agent, additional measures to be implemented as needed at inland wetland agent's direction. So that that's not outstanding in the meantime.
I could agree to that.
So if the commission is open to granting an extension of the timeframe for the submission of the plan, the August meeting is August 11th. I would recommend that the plan be required to be submitted by August 4th. So that way staff has time to distribute it to commissioners in advance of the meeting.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Does the homeowner find that acceptable?
Yes, that's fine with me.
I still wouldn't put off trying to find a soil scientist because they might be booked out 2 months.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna, like I said, if they don't call me back tomorrow, I'll reach out to, some other people on the list.
Any other comments from the commission? Thank you.
Before we move on, we will need a motion regarding the status of the cease and correct order and any changes.
I'm working on, this is Commissioner Boda, I'm working on it. So we've got, hold on. So we have we are maintaining the cease and correct. We want to adjust the reporting date for the planting plan to be submitted to the commission no later than August 4th in order to have used for the August 11th meeting. And to confirm the sediment and erosion controls with the agent, as well as schedule a site visit. I feel like there was one more thing I was trying to capture, but now I've forgotten what it was. Was that everything, or was there one more item? I thought there was.
Well, I'm to send him a copy of the soil scientist list, but that doesn't need to be part of this. I don't know if there's any modifications you wanted to make to the planting plan requirements. Additional clarification if there's anything you wanted to see in that that's not specifically identified in the letter.
No, I mean, I think that'll be up to the person that he hires in order, you know, we can make a determination and respond to anything that the person he hires submits.
Do you want the soil scientist to attend the August meeting?
I think that would make sense. Or the professional that he hires, let's say.
Soil scientist, botanist, landscape architect.
Yeah.
Are those all acceptable?
Yeah. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, so I will make a motion to uphold cease and correct 22.06.01, 20 Harrington Drive. And we are going to make some adjustments to the reporting date for the planting plan is due no later than August 4th. So it is available to us for the August 11th meeting. August 4th is an extension and the latest that we expect this report, which is to be done by a certified professional, which might include a soil scientist, botanist, landscape architect, that the property owner is to confirm the sediment and erosion controls with the agent, as well as determine a time for a site visit.
I'll second that motion.
And just to clarify, did you want the soil scientist to attend the August meeting or?
Oh, yes. And the professional that is hired for this work should be available for the August 11th meeting. I will take that as a friendly amendment.
I'll second that friendly amendment. Commissioner Basserman.
We just need to vote.
Unless there's any discussion.
Any discussion? Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Papantonis. You're muted.
Sorry, Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Bona, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay. Item 6, other business, 434 East Main.
Sorry, real quick while we still have the owner. Mr. Mirage, do you have any questions for the commission?
Yeah, the only one I have is, I mean, I guess you guys do this more often because, you know, I mean, it's 9:30 at night. Are these, if I'm, because you're expecting a soil scientist to be on this meeting at 9:30 at night. Is that, I mean, I don't know. Am I
It's
gonna have to-
typical for them.
Is it? All right. I just want to, yeah, because I haven't done it. So I just want to make sure that they're not going to be like blindsided by me. But all right, no, that's fine with me. I'll let them know. Thank you,
Right
guys.
again, other business, 434 East Main Street, inland wetland 200701. The request for return of the erosion control bond. Jamie?
All right. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I have met with the owner out at site. They're requesting return of erosion control bond. So this is the proposed development is for an office building, with the acknowledgement that the final use of and exact configuration of the building might change slightly depending on what's marketable and what they find that they want to actually build. So let me see, start off by pulling up. So the site is still under construction. So this is not the most typical request that the commission gets. But I think they're kind of looking to pause on activity for a bit potentially while they look to get approval for the sewer connection. So they have completed the retaining wall that spans the rear portion of the site, which is the closest activity to the wetlands. They have completed the wetland mitigation plantings. They did that, I want to say, last year, towards the beginning of the season. And the biggest thing I think is that the site is not in its final stable condition, which is usually what the commission is looking for when they reduce or return an erosion control bond. And there is stockpiling on site of stone material. And there is some on-site topsoil, but that is the on-site topsoil stockpiling. It is my understanding that the stone material is going to another site in another town this construction season, so it should be off-site. Anything that's not being used on-site by the end of this summer / fall. So I can start with some pictures. I can start by handing it over to the permit holder to explain the request. Does the commission have any preferred next step?
I guess before the owner comments, can you just share the wall and the rear of the property? Just so we have that when the owner speaks.
Okay. So I'll try and go through some photos real quick. So this is kind of at the front of the entrance of the site, looking kind of around. So we've got some topsoil stockpiling, and then some of the crushed stone, additional stockpiling. And then, sorry that it's not rotated. So you're looking at it sideways, but this is the top of the retaining wall, and it's got the matting and seed, and it's taken pretty well. This is the diversion swale. It diverts in both directions. They've installed erosion controls at the top of the site per previous request to try and help reduce any transport of material into this diversion swale. Again, another sideways photo going the other way of the retaining wall. And then down here is the mitigation area. It's a bit overgrown, but it's doing pretty well. The owner is going to have somebody go out and clear around the planted plants before they get completely lost. And again, this is the diversion swale looking towards the side of the property with some of the stockpiling up here. The wetland is off photo to the right. Here's a similar area to what we were seeing a couple photos ago. this is kind of a quick side trip I took. This wetland area, I just wanted to take a look at it to make sure it looked normal. There was a little bit of a sedimentation issue, which I could not pinpoint where it was coming from. It's possible it came from a different site and it just settled here because would get flooded in a large storm event by the river that passes past the back of the site, but it was looking pretty good. So I didn't see issue there other than their neighbors are dumping landscaping containers there that I should address. This is the sideways picture of the wall. The base of the wall hasn't really vegetated yet. It was seeded. And since this photo and the inspection, the owner has put some hay down to try and help protect the seed and allow it to germinate. But as you can see, it's densely vegetated immediately adjacent. So, and there is still an erosion control fence down here. So I mentioned that my main concern down here would be getting this vegetated. And then after that, I wouldn't necessarily see an issue with removing that erosion control. And again, here you can actually see the silt fence. But this is one of the areas of more concern because it's kind of a bit of a steep slope right here. And as you can see, it's so this is looking towards the level spreader. The level spreader has been installed, and there's currently a temporary sediment trap up top where the underground galleries will ultimately be installed. I understand that they have a sleeve installed so that when they can connect to the sewer, they'll minimize the amount of disturbance that they're doing below the retaining wall. This is the temporary sediment trap. And there's a lot of matting, erosion control matting, and loose hay. And they do have stone material in here. And this temporary sediment trap is actually pretty good at infiltrating. This is the diversion swale. They have a little bit of a 4-bay type situation here with a spill pipe going down into the temporary sediment trap. So, I mean, their erosion controls are very extensive and are in good shape and are maintained. And whenever I contact them about something, they're quick to address it. But it's very much still a site under construction.
Okay.
This is
Thank
again
you.
the diversion swale.
Probably appropriate to turn it over to the owner for his comment and why he feels that it's appropriate to return the portion of the erosion control.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Chairman Basserman. This is Vincent Giordano, the owner, one of the owners, I guess I should say, of the property. My brother and I own it jointly. So we have done extensive amount of work there over the last year in the preparation of the site, inclusive of the 900-foot retaining wall that we have constructed. We went to great measures throughout the course of construction to maintain our sedimentation erosion controls not to affect either the buffer or the wetlands. And I believe we have been successful in doing that. We've reached a point at the site right now where we are temporarily on pause until we can get into the next phase of work, which is inclusive of the sewer connection, which we have been in touch. I mean, we have approval for the sewer to do the sewer connection, but not actually have the ability to do the connection yet because we have to go back to the sewer commission and negotiate the fee and so on and so forth. So that's what we're up against right now and in the process of doing. They don't typically like to provide the sewer connection without a building, but they have precedent for doing that. And there's a method and a formula for which that can be done. So that's what we're doing now. The sewer has to go in first because it's the deepest before the permanent storm pipe piping and catch basins can go in up on top. In the meantime, as per plan, we have constructed the diversion swale into the sedimentation basins. In this case, we have one on each end of the site. So we feel that we have effectively precluded any runoff directly or indirectly into the buffer or the wetlands area. In the establishment of the slope from the retaining wall, the seeding of it, further protects that area. The site itself, the plateau that we've created as a result of the construction of the retaining wall, is pretty much all stone with the exception of one stockpile of topsoil. The stone, as you probably know, came from our Aldi's site that we constructed, drilling and blasting air. Some of the stone did. So we just had an overabundance of material that had to be dealt with. And so there it is. And so that is going to be used in a couple of different sites, hopefully, over the course of this construction season. I'm very confident that it will. In terms of the ultimate use of the site, as you know, as Jamie indicated, we have a proposed 25,000 square foot office building. Whether that's ultimately what goes there or not, we've been very clear from the very beginning with P&Z that that could possibly change, in which case we would have to go back to P&Z. So the reason why we don't move quite as aggressively towards that right now is a function of the economy. Also our business concerns with the fire we had in our business back in November, and whether or not we're going to market that property to a third party or to ourselves. And so that's under discussion right now. We're hopeful to settle with insurance on the fire soon, and that'll help promote a final decision on that. In the meantime, we are going to continue with the site work in terms of the sewer connection, like I said, and the installation of the storm drainage. I feel as though we are at the point now where we really have accomplished successfully sedimentation and erosion control belts and suspenders, and as our soil scientist likes to say, Velcro, in terms of precluding infiltration to the adjacent buffer or wetlands. So on that basis, I felt I've been in discussion with Jamie on this for a couple of months now. And, we've agreed sort of to get the slopes stabilized with seeding and matting as per plan prior to coming to, and so we're at that point now. And so here we are. And I don't expect, quite frankly, to be totally transparent, full release, because there's still work to be done. But everything is on top side now, where we have very good control. We have a stone-based area and very good control of any runoff from that plateau. So therefore, there is still some maintenance of the swale required, no question. Tracking mat coming in is not an issue because it's all stone anyway on the entire plateau. So on that basis, I would respectfully request a significant release of the bonding funding. Thank you.
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, while I'm thinking of it, I just want to mention, I did request two things. I requested an itemization of what they're requesting the bond reduction for. And I suggested it would be a good idea to have kind of like a phased plan and have the revised erosion controls for kind of the status of where the site is now and how that would pertain to a reduction. I did receive a letter from BL Companies. Minutes, and I will share it as soon as I can find it. is it not an option? It's called December 22nd, 2008. And they referenced that we had the site visit, town staff, Giordano, and a representative from BL companies. It is their professional opinion the applicant has done a commendable job protecting the wetland, and there's low risk of erosion from this area. Erosion control devices on down side of wall can be removed. The pad portion of the site erosion control devices have been installed and should remain in place. The devices include silt fence, temporary drainage swale, temporary sediment basin, and tracking pad. These devices will ensure that any rainwater will be directed and treated before discharge. As such, I am recommending the applicant's bond be reduced by $22,500. The remaining portion of the bond, $22,500, should remain in place as a guarantee. The applicant / contractor will be maintaining these erosion control devices until construction is complete and the site is completely stabilized. The bond is 50-50 cash and surety. I'm assuming the applicant is so if the commission is going to grant a reduction of the bond, they would have to address whether they're reducing the cash bond or the surety bond. I am not aware of a past precedence of doing this. I do think it is reasonable for the commission to consider phasing of the project, given the fact that there is kind of a bit of a standstill, but I think the commission needs to address whether they have the information they need for that and whether there's any additional activity that needs to happen on site, such as, the establishment of the pad was identified in that letter, but there's the establishment of the pad, but then there's also a lot of stone on that pad, which is not part of the project that the commission reviewed and approved. So is that something the commission is concerned with? Is that something they're not concerned with?
Commissioner Bassman, I guess I start fundamentally with, I know our proposed regulations talk about return or a partial return of a bond. What about the existing regulations under which we're operating now?
The existing regulations do not speak to it. However, I do believe, and I cannot swear to it, but I do believe the commission has had a past practice of reducing bonds based on completed tasks. But again, as far as I'm aware, the only time the commission has reduced erosion control bonds is when a part of the site has been stabilized to the final stage of what the commission approved on the approved site plan. And maybe if there was a phasing with a phase 1, phase 2, the commission could release based off of that phase 1 that it's at phase 2. So I don't know.
But for this application, we did not have a phasing, did we not?
No.
We did not, right?
I think that's potentially something the commission could entertain as a modification to the existing permit if this is going to be an ongoing temporary status that's going to remain for a while, with the understanding that if the site's not going to be active. But I would suggest that if the commission is going to entertain that you request additional information, just so that way it's easier for, because this will be setting precedents. Whatever the commission decides will be setting precedents for any and all permits in town.
Yeah.
So I think the commission needs to be really careful about how they do this and what documentation they have. Again, generally with a bond reduction request, there should at least be some itemization specifically of the items to be reduced. So the letter does not have any itemization of what is no longer needed on site.
Commissioner Brasman, the other thing is that this is going to be an active site. There's going to be the sewer connection. There's the removal of the stockpiled material. It may not all happen at once. It might happen, periodically when other sites require the material that's now stored on this site. Heavy equipment, I assume, is what's going to be needed in order to move this. So I see the site as having activity and then some period of non-activity back and forth. It almost seems we don't have all the information to know that and where things are stable and where they may not be. Where's everybody else on this?
This is Commissioner Papantonis. I'm not prepared to make that decision tonight. We're still under construction. It's not in its final stable condition. I don't think we have enough information. And under our current regs, I'm just not there.
This is Commissioner Boda. I have similar concerns. I think first, I cannot, in 20 years, I can't remember releasing a erosion for an sediment erosion control bond for an active site. I think it's important that as an agency that we take seriously all requests. And so I think that it would be important for us to identify what is the mechanism under which such a request would be done, and we would need to go back to the original application and permit. We would need to know, as Jamie already stated, from which bond are you requesting relief, if it was the cash or the surety portion, and then an itemized list of what you're looking for relief on. And further, I think it would be incumbent upon the permit holder to then demonstrate and we can potentially look back at the original application, but what is the hydrologic connection between the currently active sections of the site, as well as the areas that you're looking for sediment and erosion control relief. I think looking at some of these things in photographs and on paper, we can really, it's easy to look at individual parts and forgetting that the sum, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so I also agree, I would not be ready to do anything this evening. What you're asking is a unique request, and I think any direction that we go in would require us to be very judicious about the process and making sure that we were very clear about exactly what we were doing, why we were doing it, the mechanisms that we have, and any impacts. And so I see the letter saying that there's a commendable job with the sediment and erosion controls, and that's great. That's what we expect when we issue a permit. And so then it's a question of what is the area where work is still taking place, and where does the water from that work travel, and the areas that you're looking to remove the bond, because really at that point we have no, the purpose of the bond is if things go awry. And again, having been on the commission as long as I have, things do go awry, and we have had to use bonds in the past. And we've also been able to release them when the sites are fully stable and at their final state. So those are a number of the things that that I would need and would be helpful in a consideration. And I think additionally, even a site walk to really get a much clearer picture of where it is that you're talking about, and to pull the plan back out, because this, so this is 2020. So it's been a minute since we've seen the site and the plans, and we would just need to pull everything back out to get a much clearer picture of the whole instead of these individual parts, because they are connected.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, you mentioned, the phasing. How would a permit modification work on something like this if they were to divide the plan into a phased approach?
Well, I think the commission would have to determine if that's a modification, an acceptable modification, or if that would be a new permit. I think theoretically it could be considered a modification if there's kind of a point where they're looking to put pause on the project and it's stable and it's not going to have additional activity, and they have relatively passive erosion controls that are going to be satisfactory. Then, I mean, I guess my concern is if the commission were to you can't reduce the bond by more than what you think you need from now through the end of the project, because then you're not going to have it theoretically if you need it. So really, I think the biggest thing is having an actual itemization of what's no longer needed. And I'm not sure what that is or what that looks like. And I think if there were a phased project, then you would have that revised erosion control plan for its current state, and you would be able to reduce the bond theoretically based off of that revised erosion control plan for the current phase, if you will, of the project. So I would recommend, if the commission is interested in entertaining something like a permit modification, requesting a phased site plan for where the project is now / where it's going to kind of sit for a bit, and the itemization regarding erosion controls, that the commission can then consider the reduction quantifiably, which they can apply fairly and uniformly to other applications.
Process question, the question of or the comment that was made regarding a site walk. Should we do the site walk in advance of whatever Mr. Giordano decides to pursue here? Or should we wait until the potentially phased approach or whatever information regarding stabilization, et cetera, is available to then schedule the site walk? What makes the most sense?
I think that's kind of up to the commission to decide. It might be helpful to have that plan in hand when you're doing the site walk, so that way you can orient yourself relative to the current stage. And
that's kind of where I'm at this point. It sounds like the onus is on you, Mr. Giordano, to prepare the appropriate information that you've heard tonight is going to be needed in order to be able to assess your request for a reduction in the bond.
Yes, Chairman Basserman, I hear the comments in your conclusion, if you will. I will certainly be happy to do that. But in advance of that, I just want to comment that we have an erosion control plan that was approved by the commission, that was developed and designed by BL. And the erosion controls have effectively been implemented per plan. And so what I would do in preparation for this is just just represent the plan and the erosion controls that are identified on that plan, and attempt to demonstrate to you that those controls have in fact been implemented and are effective. And we have protected the buffers in the wetlands, and there's virtually little chance of any intrusion on them based on the erosion control plan that has been implemented. The final, and I know they go hand in hand as far as the site plan and the erosion control plan. The final site plan that's been approved by P&Z, okay, which basically is, the paving, the building, the final drainage and all. That is being sort of identified here as a later phrase appropriately. But if you want to start talking phases, and I guess what we're alluding to is that phase one, the erosion control plan as designed by BL and approved by this commission has been implemented. And not that there still isn't some maintenance on it. I said that from the beginning, okay? But we've gone to great measures to implement the plan. So in terms of the itemization of what's been done, the basis for the monetary bond that we ultimately agreed on at $45,000 was an itemization of a specific itemization of erosion and sedimentation items, such as silt fence, hay bales, stone pads, silt sacks, erosion control blanket, entry tracking mat, temporary sedimentation trap, level spreader, temporary drainage swale. Those are the items I can check off very easily. Just about all of them have been completed. Not to say that there isn't still some maintenance on them, but they've all been completed with one sole exception, and that's the sedimentation sacks that go into catch basins, which haven't been installed yet. The second part of that bond, as I was alluding to in some of my earlier comments when you were reviewing in the public hearing, relates to the restoration of the enhancement area and the plantings that we did there. That's a second part of the bond. Every single one of those plants and more have gone in, and they're surviving and have been maintained for nearly 2 years now. And we're going to go in and do some more maintenance on an ongoing basis because the vegetation there is just overwhelming. And Jamie will attest to that. So that's another part of the bond that I think can be considered for a portion of release. And the only thing I can say about that is that every single plant that's itemized here, and there's, what's the quantity? I don't know what the total quantity is, but there's quite a few here, have been installed, and probably 90 to 95% of them have survived, and maybe more. The reason why I say more is because I won't get into that, but we wound up putting more plants than what were required there. The monitoring reports, there's 5 reports, required over the period of time, and I think we've done 2 of them. So, in terms of itemization down the road here, as is being requested, that's pretty much what I will do. I'll take the erosion control plan from BL, show you what's been done graphically, however, go through this plan, tell you what's been accomplished, and continue to ask for a release. It's been alluded to what portion of the release I would desire. Obviously, it's the cash, okay? And we're perfectly willing to retain the surety, which is half, okay, to make sure that things continue to get maintained going forward. But to me, there's little or no chance of the need for the possibility of intrusion here, for the need for any requirement for bonding on this job any further. But that's my opinion. Okay, so in terms of a walkthrough, of course, that's perfectly fine with us to have the commission walk through. Jamie obviously is your representative. She's been out there any number of times, and in just in the last several weeks, rather 2 or 3 different times, and one as recent as yesterday. So, yeah, I'm perfectly willing to continue on that vein, but unfortunately, we are in a two-phased operation here, and time is going on. The cost of money is such, and that's why we're requesting some relief here. Not that we're going to stop, certain aspects of the project here and continue on as we possibly can. So, yeah.
Mr. Vasserman, Jamie, the stockpiling, what, other than the stockpiling, the conditions on the site, are they the same as when the permit was granted, or are there conditions on the site other than the stockpiling that concern you?
So I think generally speaking, the conditions align with the approval. I cannot remember. I know there's a bit of discussion regarding the construction of the retaining wall. I think I brought that to the commission to review. They were originally proposing a block retaining wall and changed it to, I'm gonna get the type of wall wrong, like a garrison style. But that's satisfactory. I mean, the condition is good, but it's not the typical condition where a bond is released. And I just want to clarify, and commissioners, please correct me if you think differently. But again, with past practice, it would be erosion controls, not just erosion controls that have been implemented, but erosion controls that are no longer required, that are no longer required because the upgradient areas that discharge to that location are stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say that that's what the commission would be looking for an itemization regarding reduction?
That's the criteria we've been using, yes. I guess to that point, we're looking at our regulations, which don't give us a lot of leeway in terms of returning a bond prior to the end of construction. And so
looking for a partial release here.
Even so, we don't have partial release in our regs.
Well, you have precedent for it, apparently.
I believe so, but I can't state one off the top of my head. And I could be getting confused with my time over in zoning.
So if we're going to move down this path at all, we need some way to be able to assess why we would take this step. And as Jamie pointed out, this is clearly a precedent setter, as we believe. And so that's why I think we're looking for some additional information that could justify us moving in a direction like this, when all other things being considered, we would not.
Say that last part.
If we were to stand right now with we believe what our past practice has been and how we have been implementing the return of the bond, given that past practice, we would not be returning a partial bond at this point. If we were to do so, whether it's a phasing modification to the application that then gives us some leeway room, we're looking to explore how we would do that, and we need the justification to do that. And it looks at this point like that's got to be something that's on your shoulders, and maybe it's the next meeting that we can review that and come to some conclusion. Right now, I don't think we have the evidence that gives us that opportunity, especially given the regulations that we are operating under.
Okay. I don't think it's in my best interest to continue to challenge that, Peter. But I will certainly defer to your sentiments, the commission's sentiments on this, so be it. And pursue this path because I think it's reasonable. And I think it's well within the rights of the commission, given the proper set of circumstances as you just outlined, whether it's phasing or modification to the permit or, however we ultimately might have to do this. Yeah, so that's what we'll do.
I will just add real quick for the commission, there is past precedence for partial bond returns. And the only one I can particularly think of off the top of my head, and most of these predate my time, it's usually the return of the erosion control bond, and the monitoring bond is tied to 5 years. So, but if the site is stable in its final condition, then the commission has released the erosion control bond and held on to the mitigation bond. I'm sure that there's some other instances if you go further back in the record, but I'm not familiar with those.
But was that with a site that was stable?
Yeah, that would be a site in its final approved condition.
Right.
This is Commissioner Begemon. The way that I could see a bond being given back is if the owner said that the site is now like dormant, nothing is going to be changing on it. The stockpiles are whatever they need to be done to. Nothing is going to be changing. There's not going to be any material being moved. And that when action starts happening at the site again, you have to come back to the commission. So that's the only way in my mind I can imagine a kind of final state, because there's a hiatus in the work project.
So creating an intermittent final stage essentially while the project is on hold.
But from what we hear tonight, this Commissioner Begemon, it sounds like there is going to be action on the site. So that's why we're in a conundrum, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully if I get through the sewer commission, we plan to continue that degree of action. And is all that's going to do is further stabilize the plateau, once we get the permanent drainage installed. Right now we have a swale, and we all know that a swale is a swale. It requires some maintenance, and you get the permanent drainage in there, and we're just going to be that much better off. And so we are going to attempt to pursue that, but we do have to get the sewer in first because it's deeper. So yeah.
Mr. Wasserman, it sounds like, if the sewer gets completed and the stockpiled material is moved, then you might be, as Commissioner Begemon suggested here, in this hiatus state in which there would be no activity, and therefore maybe a stable site is what we would be looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has some, that has some merit to that comment. So, yeah, okay. So why don't we just proceed on that basis? I'm going to continue with the sewer commission, see how far I get there. and continue on with the drainage. Like I say, over the course of the next month or so, we'll be making some determinations on those stockpiles. And then at some point, I'll come back to you. But it will be, I'm sure it will be before we are going to be building anything on that site, is the way it looks to us right now.
Gotcha. Timing wise, you mean?
Pardon me?
Timing wise, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's leave it at that.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Giordano.
Thank you.
Okay, application for review. We've got
Jamie
Canadian
Frederick and the
review.
wetland agent, just for clarification. So is this request resolved at the time being essentially, and the permit holder will come back at a future time with a new request? Is that what we're going with?
Yeah, I gotta say that this item.
I just want to make sure, is this going on next month's agenda or are we done? Has it been
This item is
resolved? Not at
continued.
this.
This item is continued, and
Well,
we'll hear from the owner as to whether he's prepared at the next meeting or the one thereafter.
well, I
I think
guess,
he's got some things that he's trying to wrestle with himself, with timing issues, et cetera. So they may make a decision on the use of the property shortly, or maybe not. So
I guess my question is, do you want to continue this to the August or the July meeting, or do you want to wait and resubmit when you know where you're at?
Oh, are you talking to me? Yes.
Yeah, I think at this point.
Okay, so I would say that we will request, whether it's the July meeting or the August meeting, to be placed back on the agenda, and you don't probably have to continue it at this point.
Okay.
You all set, Jamie? Okay, application for review, 220501 Todd's Hill.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The commission reviewed this at the May meeting and was okay with it being reviewed administratively pending a dewatering plan. I've not received that yet. I think it's probably because the applicant is still waiting on their variance application. So if their variance application doesn't go through, then why bother submitting more information to us? So I probably will hear from them soon though, because I believe that meeting is coming up. So no action needed tonight. And then agent approvals, 32 Ramblewood Drive, I brought to the commission when you were okay with agent approval. Same with 75 Block Island Road, pending the some sort of mitigation for runoff from the pavement. They did add an infiltrator on the downslope side of the additional pavement to try and help address a little bit with stormwater quality and thermal impacts. Moving on, unless there's any questions. All right, it's not hearing any. Inland Wetland Associate position, we have extended an offer to somebody and they did accept. And they should be starting June 27th. Pretty excited. And the individual has actually been the inland wetland assistant previously, so they already have experience with the department and the commission from years past. So we should be introducing them at the next meeting. And then the last thing on the agenda is 1721 North Brantford Road. I sent a letter to the property owner because that site's currently under construction. And an inland wetland permit was not required. It recently came to my attention that there is a wetland off-site on an adjacent property where it was previously thought there wasn't one. So I just sent them a letter notifying them that there is an inland wetland within 100 feet of their project, and to make sure that they're maintaining their erosion controls. Any violations or issues would result in a violation, and that any future modifications or additional activities on the site might require an inland wetland permit. That is that. Any questions? Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Commissioner Boda.
Second, and thank you all for hanging in, and I think made some good progress with the regulations this evening. Let's hope that it goes real smooth in July with that resolution.
Can put it to bed. Good night.
Good night,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at brantfordtv.org.